welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The first time I noticed it, it was small enough that I could have laughed it off. My mom was stirring sauce on the stove, tomato, garlic. The heavy, sweet smell of basil bruised between her fingers, and she said, without looking up, "Welcome to Maple Mart. Would you like to sign up for our rewards program today?" Not as a joke, not as a weird mom thing, just flat, like she'd pressed play on a sentence and let it run. I was standing in the doorway of the kitchen with my backpack still on one shoulder, keys digging into my palm, trying to remember if I'd already paid my car insurance. The clock over the microwave clicked from 6:13 to 6:14 with that cheap plastic thunk. Outside, our street was doing its usual early evening thing, sprinklers whispering in the yards, a dog barking twice, and then giving up, someone's bass-heavy music muffled through closed car windows. "Mom," I said. She kept stirring, wrist making the same perfect circle again and again. The spoon tapped the side of the pot every third rotation. Tap, tap, tap. "Would you like to sign up," she repeated, "for our rewards program today?" My dad was at the table with his laptop open, one earbud in, looking at something with columns, probably the monthly budget spreadsheet he loved more than any human relationship. He didn't look up. He just said, "He's home," like he was confirming a delivery. Let the backpack slide off my shoulder, and it hit the tile with a soft thud. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, an email probably. I didn't check. I didn't want to add another tiny problem to the pile. "I'm not at Maple Mart," I said, trying to keep my voice light, because I'd learned the hard way that anything heavier could ricochet around this house for days. "I'm at my home." "Your home." The sauce made one slow bubble, a quiet pop. My mom's shoulders were too still, like she was bracing for a photo. Then she blinked. One long blink that looked more like a reset than tiredness. When her eyes opened, there was the normal warmth there again, her usual little squint, the one she got when she was concentrating on not burning dinner. "Hey, honey," she said, and the words had weight again. How was work? Like nothing had happened. I stared at her, waiting for a smile, a little laugh, something to show she knew what she'd done. My dad finally looked up and gave me a half wave with two fingers, like I was a coworker passing his desk. It's important to say, my parents weren't bad people. They weren't cruel. They were just tired and set in their routines, and if I'm being honest, kind of invisible to each other lately. My mom worked a pharmacy counter shift that started too early. My dad ran it for a small insurance office and spent half his life on calls with people who still called the monitor the computer. Their conversations had turned into logistics. Milk, oil change, did you pay the water bill? Love expressed as reminder texts and folded laundry. So I could have filed the Maple Mart thing away as stress, a brain hiccup, an accidental mash-up of customer service scripts. If she'd been working retail, it would have made perfect sense. Except she didn't work retail. She hadn't in 20 years, and she'd said it like she meant it. I moved into the kitchen anyway, because moving felt safer than standing still. The overhead light had that faint hum that always made my temples itch if I paid attention long enough. The dishwasher was running, a slow churn of water behind its door. My mom's phone sat face up on the counter. No notifications, just her lock screen photo. The three of us at a beach in Oregon a few summers back, sunburnt and smiling in a way that felt like another lifetime. My name is Evan Mercer, 26 male. I've lived back at my parents' house in Portland, Oregon for 7 months, ever since my lease got hiked up and my bank account stopped pretending it had a bottomless pit. I tell people it's temporary. I tell myself the same thing. I work evenings at a small print and ship shop off Sandy Boulevard, laminating posters, making copies, pretending not to notice when people bring in legal documents that look like the end of their marriages. There's something I don't say out loud. I'm scared of becoming permanent, not just in the house, but in the person. A guy who watches life happen to other people and keeps making plans while the years collect dust. I've gotten good at avoiding big feelings by staying busy with small tasks. It's not heroic. It's just easier. My mom scraped her spoon against the pot, tasted a little sauce, added salt, and frowned at the bottle like it had insulted her. Laura Mercer, 54. Female, appeared fully again in that frown my mom's expressive face. Her hair clipped up with the same cheap plastic claw she'd owned since I was in middle school. She wore her pharmacy scrubs under an old cardigan because she always came home cold. "You look wiped," she said to me, the way she always did, even if I didn't. Greg Mercer, 57, male, shut his laptop halfway, not all the way, like he wanted the option to escape back into it. He was still in his work polo, collar slightly bent, the kind of man who used to run half marathons and now got winded carrying groceries. "How many packages today?" he asked. "Too many," I said. I went to the fridge and pulled out a seltzer. The cold can hissed when I cracked it open, and that sound sharp, normal felt like proof that the world still made sense. Mom reached for the pepper, and again her hand paused midair, fingers hovering like they'd forgotten what to do. Her gaze drifted toward the dining room wall where we kept a little corkboard with coupons and my dad's insurance papers and the emergency plumber magnet. She stared at it like it was a menu. I watched her face the way you watch someone you love when you're trying not to be dramatic. I waited for her eyes to track, to settle, to show recognition. She said, very softly, "Please place your items in the bagging area." My stomach did something stupid and small, like it had slipped off a step. "Mom," I said, and I hated how my voice tightened. "What are you doing?" The spoon stayed suspended above the pot. Sauce dripped off the edge in one slow line. A stain formed on the stovetop. My dad frowned. "Laura," she turned her head toward us, but her eyes didn't lock on mine. They didn't lock on my dad's either. They pointed in our direction without arriving. Her face was blank in a way that didn't feel like tiredness. It felt like waiting. And like a light flicking back on, her focus snapped into place. She blinked once, twice. "God," she said with a short laugh that didn't match her eyes. "Sorry, I'm scattered today." My dad stood up, chair legs screeching against tile. The sound cut through the kitchen like a thrown object. "You okay? You dizzy?" "I'm fine," she said too quickly. "Just a long day. You know, people yelling about copies like it's my fault the universe needs money." She tried to keep it casual, tried to make it into the kind of complaint we'd heard 100 times. But her fingers were trembling as she set the spoon down, trembling in a way that made me think of cold mornings and caffeine. I leaned forward a little, lowering my voice. "You said stuff, weird stuff. She looked annoyed for a second, real annoyance, the familiar spark, and then the annoyance slid into something else, something guarded. What stuff? Dad was watching her closely now, not the way he watched the budget, but the way he watched me when I'd come home late as a teenager and tried to pretend I hadn't been drinking. His mouth was tight. His eyes kept flicking to her hands. You just said like store lines, I said. Maple Mart, bagging area, rewards program. Mom's jaw worked, like she was chewing a thought she didn't want to swallow. I didn't. You did, I said. I couldn't help it. I sounded too sure, too accusatory. Twice. The kitchen went quiet in that particular way kitchens do when the appliances keep doing their thing, but nobody talks. The dishwasher churned. The fridge clicked. The sauce simmered quietly like it didn't want to intrude. My mom looked past me, toward the dark hallway that led to the bedrooms. Her eyes lingered there for a beat too long. When she spoke again, her voice was normal, but the words were too polished, like she'd practiced them. Evan, you're stressed, she said. You're working too much. You've been sleeping weird hours, and you've always had that imagination. My dad's head snapped toward her. Laura, what? She said, too sharp, then softer. I'm fine. Dad opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression tight, warning, made him stop. He cleared his throat instead. Maybe we should do a quick check-in, blood pressure. You've been skipping lunch. I said I'm fine, she repeated, but her eyes flicked to the hallway again, and this time her hand went to the edge of the counter like she needed something solid. In that moment, I wanted to believe the easiest explanation. Exhaustion. Low blood sugar. Stress. A weird autopilot phrase. A couple of misfires. The human brain is glitchy. People get through days by running scripts. Except she hadn't sounded like a human on autopilot. She de-sounded like something performing a human. I told myself that was dramatic. I told myself I was spiraling because I hadn't eaten since noon and my own brain was looking for a problem it could chew on. My dad reached for his phone. I'm going to call. No. My mom's voice cracked, just a hairline fracture. She smiled immediately after like she'd slapped a bandage over it. No hospitals, no making it a thing. Dad lowered the phone, but he didn't put it away. Okay, he said too calmly. No hospitals, just Laura, tell me what's going on. She stared at him. For a second, her face did that blank thing again, like the expression had been peeled off. Then she blinked and seemed to return. I'm tired, she said. That's all. I want to eat dinner and not talk about my brain like it's a broken appliance. I could see the choice forming between the three of us, hanging in the kitchen like steam. Push now and risk making her shut down completely, or let it go and pretend it was nothing. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping across the window blinds in bright stripes. The light moved across my mom's face, and in that moving light, her expression looked briefly unfamiliar, as if it belonged to a stranger trying to imitate her. My dad looked at me, and I could tell he wanted me to back off. He wanted a quiet evening. He wanted normalcy. My mom turned back to the stove and started stirring again, the spoon returning to that perfect circle. Tap, tap, tap against the pot, as if the motion itself could keep everything in place. And then she said very lightly, almost like a joke she was forcing herself to land, So, who wants garlic bread? Dad exhaled. He nodded, like that solved something. Yeah, he said. Garlic bread sounds good. I stood there, seltzer sweating in my hand, and watched my mom's back, watched her shoulders, listened to the spoon, listened to the dishwasher, listened to the faint hum of the overhead light. could let this go, or I could follow the direction her eyes kept going down the hallway and see what she'd been looking at. I swallowed, and my throat felt dry despite the carbonation. "Mom," I said quietly, "why do you keep staring at the hall?" Her stirring slowed, just for a second. Then she kept going. "What hallway?" she asked, without turning around. And that was the moment we had to choose. Eat dinner and pretend this didn't happen, or stand up and make it real. The first real problem arrived on a timer. It started with my dad's phone vibrating against the table. Not ringing, buzzing over and over, like it couldn't quite decide what it wanted. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and unlocked it. "Power company," he said. "Outage alert." My mom didn't look up. She was slicing the garlic bread with too much pressure, the serrated knife sawing hard enough that crumbs scattered across the counter. "We don't have an outage," she said. Dad tilted the phone so I could see it. A block of text, gray and official looking. Land service interruption area. NE 47th 52nd Ave start. 6:45 p.m. estimated restore. 9:30 p.m. That's in 15 minutes, he said. I checked the microwave clock. 6:29. The seconds ticked louder than they should have. Mom set the knife down, perfectly aligned with the edge of the cutting board. "No one told me about this." "They don't tell you personally," Dad said. "They just do it." She wiped her hands on a towel that was already clean. "I don't like the dark." This wasn't news. My mom had always hated it, not in a childish way, but in a practical, irritated way. She liked to see what she was doing. She liked lights on in rooms no one was in. Darkness felt inefficient to her. "I'll get the lantern from the garage," Dad said, already moving. "And the headlamps." "I'll grab candles," I said, mostly because I needed something to do. Standing still felt like waiting for a test result. As Dad headed toward the back door, Mom's eyes tracked him. Then they flicked again to the hallway. Same pause, same slight tension in her jaw. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice low. "Seriously, what's with the hallway?" She didn't answer right away. She opened the oven, slid the garlic bread inside, closed it, set a timer. 12:00. The beeps were too loud. "There's nothing with the hallway," she said. "You're hovering." "I'm concerned." She turned on me, and for a second her annoyance was sharp and familiar enough to be comforting. "About what?" "That I'm tired. That I said something weird earlier." "Jesus, Evan," Dad called from the garage, his voice muffled. "Where'd I put the spare batteries?" "In the red bin," Mom said automatically. Too automatically. I went to the pantry for candles. The light flickered, not off, just a brief dip, like the house had inhaled and thought better of it. My phone buzzed with the same outage alert. 15 minutes. This should have been boring, mildly inconvenient, an excuse to complain and eat dinner by candlelight. Instead, my chest felt tight, like I'd already missed a step and was trying to recover mid-fall. I pulled out 3 candles and a lighter and turned back toward the kitchen. Mom was standing very still in front of the back hallway entrance, the one that led past the bathroom to the bedrooms. Her shoulders were squared. Her hands were clasped in front of her like she was waiting for instructions. "Mom," I said. She spoke without turning around. "Do not open the door for anyone." The words landed wrong not because they were scary, but because of how she said them. Clear, flat, directive, no context. "What door?" I asked. "The front," she said. "The back. Any door." I laughed, a quick bark I didn't mean. "Okay, I wasn't planning on it." Came back in with the lantern and headlamps, pausing when he saw her posture. Laura, she turned then, smiling too fast. Power's going out. Just basic safety. People take advantage. Dad hesitated. Take advantage of what? Darkness, she said. And then, after a beat, disruption. The word choice was odd enough that I noticed it, filed it away. Disruption was something my dad said in meetings, not something my mom said about crime. Mom, I said carefully, did something happen at work today? She opened her mouth, closed it, her eyes flicked to the hallway again. No, she said, nothing. The lights went out at exactly 6:45. Not a flicker this time, just a clean cut, like someone had reached in and unplugged the day. The hum of the overhead light vanished. The dishwasher died mid-churn, leaving a hollow quiet behind. Outside, I heard other houses reacting, someone swearing, a garage door whining to a stop, a car alarm chirping once and falling silent. Dad turned on the lantern. The soft yellow glow filled the kitchen unevenly, stretching shadows into the corners. It smelled faintly like plastic and old batteries. Okay, he said, too brisk. No problem, we're fine. The oven timer beeped in the dark, shrill and insistent. Mom startled like it had shouted her name. She turned it off too hard. We sat down to eat. The three of us, lit from below, our faces half familiar. Forks scraped. Bread crackled. Somewhere down the street, a dog started barking and didn't stop. I tried to tell myself this was just my brain stacking coincidences. Stress plus outage plus earlier weirdness equaled unease. That's how humans work. We find patterns even when there aren't any. Then the doorbell rang. One clear chime. Powered by a battery backup, I knew dimly. We'd installed it last year. Mom stood up so fast her chair tipped backward and hit the floor. No, she said. Dad blinked. What? No one opens it, she said. Her voice was low now, urgent. Do not interact. Laura, Dad said, frowning. It's probably a neighbor. Or the doorbell rang again. 2 quick presses this time. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. Power's out. Need to check your meter, utility worker. Dad pulled his phone out at the same time. I got a text, he said. So did I said. Mom shook her head hard enough that her hair clip rattled. They don't text. They don't come door to door during an outage. That's not true, Dad said, though he didn't sound certain. Sometimes there's no badge, she said. No truck. We could hear the person outside now. Footsteps on the porch. A muffled voice through the door. Hello, power company. My heart was pounding. I hated how part of me wanted to open the door just to make this stop. Just to restore normalcy. That same part of me that hated conflict, that wanted life to go back to scripts and routines. Dad moved toward the door anyway. I'm just going to, Mom stepped between him and the door. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were sharp. Focused. Greg, please. He stopped, looked at her, really looked. Why are you acting like this? Another knock. Firmer, sir, the voice said. Ma'am, I just need to take a look at your panel. Won't take long. I swallowed. Dad, maybe we should call the power company directly. The number on the website. Good, Mom said immediately. Too immediately. Do that. Dad hesitated, then nodded. He pulled up the website, squinting in the lantern light. The page took forever to load on spotty data. The knocking came again. Louder, impatient. Look, the man said, irritation creeping in. I've got a list. Your address is on it. Mom backed up a step, bumping into the hallway wall. Her breathing was shallow now. I noticed then, really noticed, that her phone wasn't on the counter anymore. It was gone. Mom, I said, where's your phone? She didn't answer. Laura, Dad said, sharper now. Where is your phone? She looked at me. a split second, her face went blank again, like a screen between refreshes. Then she said, "It's not safe." The knocking turned into a fist, 3 hard thumps that rattled the doorframe. "Open up," the man said. "This is getting ridiculous." Dad's phone finally connected. He put it on speaker. A recorded voice started talking about high call volumes. The lantern flickered. And from the hallway behind us, I heard something small and unmistakable. The soft click of a door opening. Mom's eyes went wide. "I told you," she whispered. "Don't let them in." Dad killed the speakerphone call after 30 seconds of hold music and a looped apology that sounded like it had been recorded in 2009. He didn't say anything for a beat. The lantern light caught the side of his face and made him look older than he was. "We can call non-emergency," I said. My voice came out too thin. Mom was still staring down the hallway, one hand braced on the wall like she needed it. The hallway was a straight shot from the kitchen. Pantry door on the left, bathroom on the right, then the small bend toward the bedrooms. In the dark, it looked longer than it actually was, like a tunnel. At the far end, one of the bedroom doors stood open a few inches, the edge of it a black line against blacker darkness. "Mom," Dad said, keeping his tone even. "Who opened that door?" She swallowed. "I didn't." "You were with us," I said, trying to keep logic in the air. We'd hear footsteps. We had heard something. That click, the soft hinge whisper. But none of us had moved. The fist hit the front door again. Not a polite knock now, a demand. "Hey," the man barked. "I'm not leaving until someone talks to me." Dad looked toward the living room where the front door was past the archway, across the short carpeted section, then the entry tile. "Okay," he said. "Attempt 1, verify." "Evan, grab my laptop. If the Wi-Fi's down, hotspot it. Check the outage map. See if there's any note about crews." I nodded because it was something to do. My hands were shaking just enough that the laptop felt slippery. I carried it to the couch in the living room, keeping the lantern in the kitchen as our only steady light source. The living room was darker, just the dim spill from the lantern through the archway. Our front windows faced the street. Outside, the neighborhood was patchy with light. A few houses had generators, others were pitch black. Headlights passed occasionally, slow and cautious. The man outside was a shadow shape on the porch. I could see him through the side light window next to the door if I leaned, but the glass made him blur. Dad hovered behind me, staying back from the door, but close enough to feel like he could control it if it came down to it. "Don't open it," he muttered, more to himself than to me. Mom stood in the kitchen entrance, half in lantern light, half in shadow, like she couldn't decide which world she belonged to. I turned on my phone hotspot and tried to load the power company outage map. The laptop wheel spun. A line of text, connecting, then no internet. "Come on," I whispered, tapping the trackpad harder than it deserved. Outside, the man's voice rose. "I can see you moving in there. Just open the door." Dad leaned toward the sidelight window and called, "What's your name? What company?" There was a pause, like the man was annoyed he had to perform credentials. "PGE," he said. Name S, the rest got swallowed by the porch light being off and the street noise. But it sounded like he could have said a name. He added, "I've got a badge." "Show it to the window," Dad said. The man stepped closer. A rectangle flashed in the glass, some kind of ID card held up. In the low light, it was just a pale block with darker shapes. Could have been anything. A badge, a gym card, a library card. "Can you read that?" Dad asked me. I leaned in until my forehead almost touched the glass. The card was too far, too angled. The man's hand shook slightly. "No," I said, "it's blurry." Dad's jaw worked. "Okay," he called, "hold it up again and turn on your phone light." The man made a noise like a laugh. "I'm not doing a whole photo shoot. Just open the damn door." That was the first real crack. The moment he stopped pretending to be patient. Mom's voice came from behind us, too calm. "He's not supposed to get angry." Dad looked back at her. "Laura, what does that mean?" She blinked fast, like her eyes were dry. "It means he's not from the list." I abandoned the laptop and moved back into the kitchen. The garlic bread smell was stronger now, but it was cooling, slightly burnt at the edges. The lantern sat in the center of the table like a small sun. "Okay," Dad said, trying to reset. "Attempt 2, call 911 if he tries to force entry. Otherwise, we wait him out." "Non-emergency," I corrected automatically. Dad shot me a look. "If he breaks in, it becomes emergency." Mom's eyes darted to the hallway again. The open door at the end had widened just a little. Or maybe I only noticed it now. The gap looked like a mouth. "I'm going to close that," I said, already stepping toward the hallway. Mom's hand shot out and caught my wrist. Her grip was strong, surprising. "No, Mom," I said, forcing myself not to yank away. "It's just a door." Her pupils were wide in the lantern light. "It's not just a door." Dad's voice snapped. "Laura, stop it. Evan, just close it." Mom let go of me like she'd been burned. I walked into the hallway anyway, using my phone flashlight now. The beam carved out the familiar layout. Pantry shelves on the left, stacked with cereal and canned beans. Bathroom door on the right, slightly ajar. Then the bend toward my parents' room. And the small guest room I'd been sleeping in. The air in the hallway was cooler. It smelled faintly like laundry detergent and the eucalyptus oil my mom used in the diffuser. The open door at the end wasn't my parents' bedroom. It was the guest room. My room. My stomach tightened again. I hadn't left it open. I was annoyingly careful about doors because of a childhood habit. Close doors, close drawers, turn off lights. Control the small things. As I got closer, I heard something from inside. A soft rustle, like fabric shifting. My flashlight beam hit the edge of the door, then pushed into the room. For one awful second, it looked like someone was standing by my bed. A tall shape, motionless. I froze so hard my calves cramped. Then the shape moved, and the terror collapsed into something stupid and explainable. My coat, hanging on the back of the chair, had slipped. The hood had fallen forward, making it look like a head. I let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and a sob at the same time. "Jesus," I whispered. Behind me, Mom made a small sound, half gasp, half relief. "What is it?" "Nothing," I said, harsher than I meant. "It's nothing. My coat." I stepped into the room and pushed the door wider. The floorboards creaked under my weight. Old house, normal noises. My phone light swept across my bed, my backpack, my nightstand with a glass of water. Everything was where it should be, except my phone charger wasn't plugged in anymore. The cord lay on the floor, the end coiled like it had been yanked. Frowned and crouched, picking it up. The outlet was empty. I remembered plugging it in that morning. I remembered because I'd been annoyed the plug was loose. I heard the front door handle jiggle. Not a knock, not a fist, a deliberate test of the lock. Dad's voice cut through the hall. "Hey, stop that," the man outside responded, his tone cold now. "Open the door." The handle jiggled again. Harder. I stood up too fast and smacked my elbow on the doorframe. Pain shot down my forearm, sharp and bright. I swore under my breath, shaking my hand. Back in the kitchen, the lantern light flickered again, just a pulse. But it made Mom flinch like a reflex. Dad moved quickly to the entryway, staying behind the door, phone in hand. "I'm calling," he said. "Wait," Mom said. Dad ignored her and dialed. 911, the line went dead. Not busy, dead. The call dropped instantly, like the network had been cut. He stared at the screen. "What the?" I tried mine. Same thing. The call ended before it rang. "No service," I said, checking the bars. I still had 2. Data worked enough to send texts. But calls, nothing. Dad's face drained of color. "That's not normal." Mom's voice small. "It's happening." "What is happening?" Dad demanded. Mom opened her mouth, and again she did that blank reset thing, eyes unfocusing, expression flattening, like someone had paused her mid-thought. When she spoke, it wasn't to answer him. It was a script. "Please remain calm," she said, in that same flat cadence. "Help is on the way." Dad stared at her like he'd been slapped. Outside, the door handle jiggled again, and this time there was a dull thud against the wood, like a shoulder testing it. Dad grabbed the lantern off the table and shoved it into my hands. "Go to the back," he said. "Check the sliding door. Make sure it's locked." "Evan, now." My heart hammered. "Dad, go." I ran through the kitchen toward the back of the house, the lantern swinging, throwing shadows across cabinets and walls. The back door was at the end of the kitchen by the garage entry, and beyond it, the small laundry area, and then the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. I could picture it clearly: the patio, the grill, the fence line. As I reached the slider, I saw movement outside, someone crouched near the fence, just a dark shape shifting. I stumbled, catching myself on the counter. The lantern rattled. My shins slammed into a chair leg. Pain bloomed. I bit back a yell. The shape near the fence straightened and moved toward the back of the house. Then my lantern beam hit the sliding door handle. It was already halfway up, unlocked, and as I stared, the handle lifted the rest of the way, slow and steady from the outside. The glass door began to slide. That was the point where the option to retreat, or maybe it's nothing, still existed, snapped cleanly in two. Because someone was already coming in. The sliding door moved like it was trying not to make a sound. A slow scrape of rubber on track, a thin hiss of air. I lunged forward and grabbed the handle with both hands, yanking it back toward the frame. The glass shuddered under my palms, cold even through the lantern heat. On the other side, a dark shape filled the gap. Not a monster. A person in a hoodie, face turned away, one hand still on the edge of the glass. For half a second, we both froze, the door half open between us like a negotiation. Then the person shoved. The glass slid an inch, then two. My feet skidded on the tile. My shins screamed where I'd hit the chair earlier. The lantern swung wild in my left hand and threw the intruder's shadow up onto the ceiling, huge, distorted, ridiculous. "Get back," I yelled, and my voice cracked. From the front of the house, the door slammed once hard like someone had hit it with their shoulder. Dad shouted something I couldn't make out. I jammed my foot into the bottom track, toe wedged between the moving door and the frame. Pain shot up my ankle, but the door stopped. The person outside cursed, low and fast. "Evan," Dad's voice, closer now, coming down the hall. "What's happening?" "Back door," I shouted. "Someone S." The hoodie figure leaned in and shoved again, harder. The edge of the door bit into my shoe. I could feel the rubber sole compressing, my toe going numb. If they got the door open, they were in the kitchen in 3 steps. Past the laundry nook, past the pantry, and into the living room. past my mom. My mom. I twisted the latch up with my right hand, trying to force it into place, but the door wasn't closed enough. My fingers slipped. The lantern banged against the counter and clattered to the floor, rolling. The light spun in frantic circles, making the room strobe. The figure took advantage of the chaos. Their hand shot through the gap and grabbed the inside handle. I reacted without thinking. I slammed my forearm down on their wrist, bone on bone. A dull thud. They jerked back with a sharp inhale. My elbow screamed from where I'd hit the doorframe earlier. The pain made my eyes water instantly. Evan, Dad burst into the kitchen, holding a heavy metal flashlight like a baton. He looked past me, saw the hand, saw the gap, and his face changed, pure focus. All the spreadsheet softness gone. He stepped in beside me and shoved the door with his shoulder, driving it toward the frame. For a moment, it worked. The gap narrowed. The intruder's fingers slipped away. Then the figure outside kicked the bottom edge of the door one solid boot strike, and my wedged foot took it. My ankle rolled. White-hot pain. I went down on one knee, gagging on a sound. Dad swore and grabbed my arm, hauling me back as the door slid open a full foot. The intruder didn't step in right away. They held the door open and looked over their shoulder into the yard like they were waiting for a cue. From the living room, there was a crash, a splintering thud that made the whole house vibrate. The front door. Dad's eyes went wide. "Laura," he shouted. I pushed myself upright on my good leg, shaking. "Mom," I yelled, and it came out too loud, too desperate, like I was 10 again and lost in a store. No answer. The intruder at the sliding door finally moved. They didn't sprint in heroically. They moved like someone who'd done this before, quick, controlled, trying not to slip on tile. Hoodie up. Gloves. Their heads stayed down. Dad swung the flashlight, aiming for the intruder's shoulder, but the figure ducked and barreled forward. Dad's swing clipped the hoodie's back instead of bone. The intruder slammed into Dad's chest. Dad grunted and stumbled backward into the pantry door. The flashlight hit the floor and skittered, its beam slicing the cabinets. I grabbed the nearest thing with weight, the cast iron skillet, cooling on the stove from earlier. My hands trembled around the handle. The skillet felt absurdly heavy, like I'd picked up a dumbbell with panic on it. The intruder turned toward me. I saw their eyes for the first time, just eyes above a mask. Not glowing, not evil, human eyes, alert and annoyed. "Don't," they said, and it wasn't a threat so much as a command they expected to work. I swung anyway. I didn't hit their head. I wasn't that lucky, and I wasn't that skilled. The skillet caught their forearm as they raised it to block. The impact jolted up my wrist and into my teeth. The intruder made a short, involuntary noise and staggered sideways. Dad recovered, grabbed a chair from the table, and shoved it into the intruder's path. The chair legs scraped and caught. The figure stumbled over it and slammed into the counter, knocking over the knife block. Knives clattered across tile like dropped keys. My mom appeared at the kitchen entrance, not running, not screaming, walking. Her hair clip was gone. Her scrubs were smudged with something dark on the elbow, maybe garlic bread crumbs, maybe dirt. I couldn't tell in the spinning lantern light. She held her phone in both hands like it was a badge. Her face was blank, and she said clearly, flatly, "Please place your items in the bagging area." Dad stared at her, horror and confusion colliding. "Laura, what the hell?" The intruder's eyes flicked to her, then back to us. They didn't look surprised, They looked impatient, like our family drama was delaying the schedule. From the front of the house, a voice shouted, "Back door." Now, a second person, coordinated. The intruder in the kitchen made a decision. They lunged for the kitchen counter where my mom's purse usually sat. It wasn't there. Their hands swept, searching, then grabbed my mom's phone out of her hands. My mom didn't react like someone being robbed. She just stood there and repeated, "Would you like to sign up for our rewards program today?" Dad moved toward her, reaching out like he could shake her back to normal. But the intruder shoved him with one arm and sprinted toward the hallway, the same hallway my mom had been staring at all night. They knew the layout. They ran straight for my room. I knew instantly what this was about. Not us, not the TV, not jewelry, my laptop, my dad's laptop, our phones, my dad's work access, two-factor codes, banking apps, password managers, the texts, the utility worker, the dropped calls. This wasn't supernatural. It was procedural. It was a play. And my mom had been compromised before the power even went out. "Dad," I shouted. "Hallway, stop him." Dad spun and chased, limping slightly from where he'd hit the pantry door. I followed on my bad ankle, half-hopping, pain making my vision pulse. The lantern rolled after us, casting manic circles as if the house itself was dizzy. We hit the hallway. The intruder was already at my door, yanking it open wider. My coat chair shifted again, making that stupid silhouette, but nobody had time to mistake it now. Dad caught up and grabbed the intruder's hoodie from behind, jerking them back. The hoodie stretched. The intruder twisted and drove an elbow into Dad's ribs. Dad made a sound I'd never heard from him, air knocked out, a raw grunt, and he folded slightly, one hand going to his side. The intruder dove into my room anyway and snatched my backpack off the floor. My backpack with my wallet and keys, and worse, my small notebook with every login I'd ever written down in a moment of laziness. They ripped it open, fingers moving fast, too practiced. I raised the skillet again, but my wrist screamed. My grip slipped. The intruder pulled out my notebook, flipped it once, and I saw the recognition in their eyes. A quick nod to themselves. Then they bolted. Dad grabbed for them and missed. He stumbled, wheezing, clutching his ribs. I went after the intruder on sheer adrenaline. I got 2 steps into the hallway before my ankle gave out. My foot slid. I crashed hard onto the tile, shoulder first. Pain exploded through me. My breath punched out. For a second, I couldn't inhale at all. Just a helpless, silent gape. The intruder vaulted over my legs like I was furniture and sprinted toward the back. Dad, gasping, forced himself upright and lunged after them anyway. He reached the kitchen just as the intruder shoved the sliding door fully open and slipped out into the yard. Dad swung the metal flashlight. He must have grabbed it again, and this time it connected with the intruder's shoulder blade. A solid hit. The intruder stumbled, almost fell, then caught themselves on the patio railing and kept going, limping. A second later, someone whistled short, sharp, and a car engine turned over in the street beyond the fence. Tires on wet pavement, quick and controlled. Dad stood at the threshold, breathing hard, looking like he wanted to chase, and knew he couldn't. He slid the door shut with shaking hands and locked it. Then he turned and sank to the floor against the cabinet, pressing his palm to his ribs, face pale. I lay in the hallway, trying to pull air back into my lungs like it had been stolen. My shoulder throbbed. My ankle felt wrong, swollen already, unstable. The lantern's light pooled near my head, warm and cruelly calm. My mom stood in the kitchen doorway, still holding her empty hands in front of her, as if the phone was still there. Her eyes moved slowly, not tracking anything specific. "Help is on the way," she said. Dad looked at her, tears in his eyes. He didn't blink away. "Laura," he whispered. "Laura, please." She blinked once, long, heavy. For a moment, I thought she was coming back. Then her gaze slid past us, toward the front of the house. "Next customer," she said quietly. And outside, somewhere on our dark street, a car door shut. The power came back at 9:17 p.m. Not with drama, not with a bang. Just a soft click somewhere in the walls, the refrigerator humming awake, the porch light blinking on like it had only been resting its eyes. By then, the house was full of other noises. The paramedic's boots squeaked on tile as he knelt beside me in the hallway, careful with my ankle. The EMT asked my name twice and waited for me to answer both times. He smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. Someone, probably a neighbor, was murmuring in the living room, their voice low and concerned. Like this was a story they'd already started telling themselves. My dad sat on a kitchen chair with his shirt pulled up, ice pressed awkwardly against his ribs. He kept apologizing to the paramedic for bleeding on the towel, even though there wasn't much blood. His voice shook more when he tried to joke. "I'm fine," he said for the fourth time. "I've had worse from a bad chair at work." The paramedic nodded in the patient way people do when they know you're lying to yourself. "Still getting you checked," he said. The police arrived next. 2 officers, one young, one older. They took notes. They asked the same questions in different ways. What time did the outage start? Did we recognize the intruders? Did anything go missing? I said yes. I said no. I said I wasn't sure. They found my backpack in the yard, half unzipped, dumped near the fence. My wallet was still there. My keys. The notebook was gone. The older officer's pen paused when I told him that. "What kind of notebook?" "Passwords," I said, embarrassed even now. Stuff I was supposed to memorize and didn't. He didn't judge me. He just nodded and wrote it down. They said the intruders likely hit multiple houses during the outage. Opportunistic but organized. The texts. The fake utility angle. Not uncommon. They told us we did the right thing by not opening the door. They told us we were lucky. Lucky is a strange word to hear when your ankle is swelling like a bad thought, and your father winces every time he breathes too deeply. My mom sat on the couch the entire time. She didn't cry. She didn't pace. She didn't argue with anyone. She held a blanket around her shoulders, even though the heat had come back, and stared at the coffee table like she was waiting for it to prompt her. When the younger officer asked her if she was injured, she said, "Thank you for shopping with us today." Everyone froze. The officer blinked, then glanced at my dad. Dad swallowed and said, "She's had a rough day." They didn't push, not then. They finished their report. They gave us a case number. They told us someone would follow up. When the house finally emptied out, neighbors drifting home, police cars pulling away, the ambulance leaving me with a temporary brace and a warning not to be a hero, the quiet felt heavier than the blackout had. The lights were on, but nobody turned on the TV. Dad locked every door twice. Front, back, garage. He tested each one, tugging like he didn't trust the locks to remember what they were supposed to do. Then he sat down across from my mom and took her hands. "Laura," he said softly. We need to talk. She looked at him, really looked. Her eyes were wet now, unfocused but present. I think I broke, she said. The words were so plain they hurt more than panic would have. Dad squeezed her hands. You didn't break. She shook her head. I let them in, she whispered. Not the house, the phone. I answered a call earlier. They knew my name. They knew the pharmacy schedule. They told me there was fraud on our account, and I had to stay on the line. They told me not to hang up. They told me to follow instructions. Her voice went thin. I thought I was helping. The pieces slid together quietly. No monster, no possession, just pressure, authority. Scripts designed to override doubt. A tired woman after a long shift doing what she'd been trained to do for decades, comply. They had me repeat things, she said, to confirm, to stay calm. I don't remember when it stopped being a conversation. Dad leaned his forehead against hers. We'll fix it. I kept thinking, she said, if I just did it right, it would end. I thought of her standing in the kitchen, repeating lines like a function call stuck in a loop. That night, none of us slept. We sat together in the living room with all the lights on. My ankle elevated on pillows, Dad breathing shallow but steady, Mom holding her phone like it might apologize. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from a banking app I'd forgotten I even had. New login detected. I showed Dad. He nodded once. Okay, he said. Okay, we handle it in the morning. Morning came anyway. In daylight, the house looked ordinary again. Scuffed baseboards, coffee rings on the counter, the same magnet-covered fridge. But there were new things too. A cracked pantry door, a chair leg bent wrong, a smear on the sliding door where a hand had been. The insurance adjuster came. The locksmith came. A technician from the phone company shrugged and said outages could do weird things to networks. Maybe interference. Maybe coincidence. Mom didn't go back to work. She started therapy instead. So did Dad eventually. I moved my stuff out of the guest room and into boxes, not because anyone asked me to, but because the room felt borrowed now. Weeks passed. Accounts were frozen. Passwords changed. Credit watched. Most of the damage stopped before it spread too far. That part, at least, had an ending. But some things didn't reset cleanly. Sometimes, when my mom is tired, she still slips. Not full scripts, just fragments. Please wait, she'll say when someone asks her a question too fast. Next, when no one is in line. She always catches herself now. She laughs it off. But the laugh comes a beat late. We don't tease her about it. We don't talk about the hallway much either, or the way the intruder knew which door was mine. Life resumes its shape. Work, bills, dinners, lights on in empty rooms. But sometimes, when my phone buzzes unexpectedly, my chest tightens. And sometimes, when my mom pauses too long before answering, I watch her face carefully, waiting to see if the person I know is still there, or if she's waiting for a prompt. The house is quieter now. Not empty, just listening.